So, hi everybody. Hi. I'm a recovering addict. My name is Anna.
Hi, Anna.
Just want to check y'all out for a minute and see who's here. I want to take a moment just to have the Creator come in and bless us all and this weekend. So let's just have another moment. Thank you. So, when I was brainstorming what I was going to say tonight, I drew a graphic organizer, and I'm a horticulturist, so the way it turned out, I loved it. But I put Beyond Our Wildest Dreams in the middle, and Zach just read that passage from the book. That sentence, that we go on to help others and live lives that we can be proud of, is beyond our wildest dreams. And I read the whole chapter. This comes from chapter 6, A New Way of Life, in the Living Clean book. I love this book. When it came out, I've got lots of markings in it, just like I do my basic text, but there's just been so much in here that has really hit home for me. And so I wrote Beyond Our Wildest Dreams, and, I thought about what is it that at this moment in time I have. And I wrote a relationship with the Creator. I'm a grandmother who is loved. I have a relationship with my family, with others. I have the ability to be myself, the ability to accept my mistakes. I have a relationship with myself, self-acceptance, and I've been able to stay clean for 22 years, thank God. So the point in time I want to talk about has been about the last. It kind of covers 16 years, but it covers the last 4 years, because when I read this chapter, and then I went to my step work that I'm in right now, on the third step right now, and I'm on the third time through my step work. And every time I do step work, the first time obviously was about the wreckage of my past and how the drugs played a part in that. The second time through was because I had gotten in a relationship with a guy, and I was brokenhearted, and I wanted to try to figure out, my part in it. And then this time, it's been about just the layers of the onion that we have to keep peeling in the process of recovery. And so it was getting down to how do I have relationships with people? And as it turned out, I'm going to read you part of my second step that I was doing January 9th, 2014. On the second step, the question was in the step working guide, what do I have hope about today? And my answer was, from experience working the steps, I know that I can work on my character defects and find relief. The hope I feel is that I know I can improve my life. And that's why we do step work, right? So at this point in my life, I'd been a teacher for 12 years, and I had 18 years clean. I went back to school in my mid-40s. I went down to Michigan State, and I spent 2.5 years as part of the capital area, Narcotics Anonymous, and met a lot of good people there. Some are here. And I thought that this new career and this new life was a gift, because I had stayed clean. And mind you, when I went back to school, I think I had 4 years clean. So everything had fallen into place so easily. When I decided to go back to school, I had already been at Michigan State. One day I went down there and I walked in and I said, I want to readmit. And I ran into one of my old professors in the horticulture department that said, oh, well, there's this thing called agri-science that you could teach with your background in horticulture. It's like, wow, everything just fell into place that day. And I felt that it was meant to be. And so I moved down, January 2000, I moved down to East Lansing. My kids were both students at the time. It was like a big family reunion, and it was really cool. It was really awesome. My son helped me with classes, and my daughter helped me with computers, and it was just really awesome. And so, I thought my dream had come true. Here I am at school. My transcripts, if you look at them from way back when, right out of high school, I went to Central Michigan, and I was already partying before I went there. In fact, I remember going to a party, drinking one of those GIQ beers, and feeling like, oh man, I found the remedy to my self-esteem problems and my fear of the world and everything else. And so I also had a period of time where I would take anything you put in front of me without even asking what it was. And of course, I was doing lots of other things. You know how we are. So I decided that I lost my train of thought. I don't know where I was going. Yeah, I went down to Michigan State. Anyway, my transcripts, that was it. I have a brain problem. My transcripts from back in 1973, when I was a freshman at Central, and I was taking chemistry, I was taking math, I withdrew out of chemistry, I failed the math class, my transcripts look like someone, I partied all the time. That's what I did. I made it my profession at that point in time. And so when I went back to school at Michigan State, I found that I did have the ability to be a student, and I was clean, and I 4-pointed my organic chemistry class, and it was like, being clean is so awesome. And, all of these things were coming to me, and it just felt like, I was on my way. So I got my degree in 2002, and the job that I have opened up here in Traverse City, and I slid into that job and started to be a teacher. I had 6 years clean. I was 46 years old, I think. And I just retired from that job. Just retired, but I'm going to go back next year as the parapro, and you might wonder why after I get done. But I just decided it's what I need to do. I didn't intend to stop teaching this early, but once I got into the thick of it, I had a lot of trouble. I couldn't understand why I couldn't get along with these people, why I just felt like this big most of the time. I felt so out of place with the people that I worked with. Every Friday after school, they were going down to the Park Place bar for the curriculum meeting. And they would ask me, why don't you go? So-and-so doesn't drink, and he goes. And I'm like, because I just am not comfortable going. And for a while, I tried to keep my anonymity, but somebody spilled the beans after a while. And so, it says in this book that we need to be really careful about our anonymity, because some people don't take being a recovering addict as a good thing. And so I think there was some opinions going around as well. But I just found that for every step forward, I took 2 steps back. And I was just, I couldn't understand why everything had been so easy up to that point, to get back into school, to get through school, to get the job that fell into my lap. Why wasn't it working out once I had the job? And this went on for a long time, and there are some years in there that I don't remember because they were just so bad. And, I actually started, writing the steps again based on the trouble I was having. There's a place in this book, it says, page 177 in Living Clean, it says, finding your place in society isn't the goal, it's a means by which we achieve our goals. The idea of achieving social acceptability can distract us from the goal of awakening our spirits. And it began to dawn on me that I was leaving my recovery in the dust for this job and taking things home every night and taking things home on the weekend and trying to create these engaging lesson plans that all the kids are just going to love. That my meeting attendance got low, contact with a lot of people in recovery was really low, and I was kind of, that bad neighborhood in your head when you're there all alone. That's where I was. And my thinking gets me into trouble, because if I don't get around the positive people in recovery and the positive vibes, then what's going to creep in here is, you're no good. You never were meant to do this anyway. Why do you think that you could be a teacher? And yada, yada, yada. And so I didn't have any idea how to have relationships with professional people. And I don't know. I wanted to be liked. I wanted to be competent, but I just didn't know what to do in the situation. I just did not know. And I was at a point where I felt like I was totally out there, flapping in the breeze. And I felt like I would come to meetings and, how bad it is and how bad it is. And for a long time, I felt like I was doing that. And then I just shut up. And so for years, I sat in meetings and didn't say anything because I couldn't articulate what was going on. I couldn't articulate the fact that I felt, because they were saying I was doing this and I was saying that, and I'm like, but I didn't do that. And yet, it just kept coming and kept coming. And then there got to be a period of time where I wasn't sure if I was the liar they thought I was, or if, the conversations I had with either kids or parents actually were as bad as they said they were. Like they said, I told a parent that I didn't want her son in my class, and I'm like, do you think I'm crazy? Why would I do that? And, it's just stuff like that just kept coming and coming and coming. I was at the point where I was like, I was frazzled. Number one, I was tired. I got to the point where I started not being able to remember really well. And I did have a head injury years ago in a car accident. So I went to a neurologist and I told him that I was having a hard time remembering. And they gave me that battery of tests, and some of them are kind of difficult. And I remember calling Wanda that day in tears because I said, I know I failed the test. Maybe I've got Alzheimer's, or I'm just like, I just don't know what's going on with me. And the test came back. The guy said, you know what? It shows what we think is depression. And I have depression. I know that I have depression. I've known this for years. But it had gotten so bad because I just didn't know what the truth was about myself anymore. And, it had gotten really bad. And so I went back to school, and I actually I was really upfront with them about the fact that I feel like sometimes it's just getting to be too much, and and I'm losing my memory, and they use that against me, which is fine because maybe they should have, But I kept like, why is all of this so difficult if it was meant to be? Why is this so difficult if I was meant to do this? Here I am. I've been in horticulture my whole life. I'm teaching horticulture. I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. And yet, why is everything happening the way it is? And what happened is that I forgot to take care of myself. Trying to take care of school and all of the everything that goes along with that, but physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally, I was drained. I was just drained. And it says somewhere in this book that, making our dreams come true is only the first part of the story. It doesn't always end up the way you think it's gonna. And so, it says, we mistakenly believe that social acceptability can give us immunity from the pain that seems to come with caring what other people think. Yeah, what drove me at that point in time was fear. And, it also says, when seeking approval becomes more important than recovery, we are more vulnerable to relapse than we recognize. And so I was totally lost in my career. I was only going to meetings a little bit. People would say, I wanted to ask you to sponsor me, but you're too busy. I was. I used my sponsors for whining a lot, but I never really came up with any solutions. And there are years that just went by that I don't really remember. And so school year 2014-15 was really bad. I felt distracted. This is after I'd taken this brain test. But I was distracted and just really very low. I was right at the bottom of any of the reserves that I had in my life at that point in time. And I was doing the second step. The question is, what things did I do that I can hardly believe I did when I look back at them? And I wrote, why have I been suffering at my place of work for so long and trying to convince people of my worth? I was passive. I was full of fear. As a new teacher, I allowed things to happen because I couldn't and didn't stand up for myself. I didn't know how. I never knew how. And so I'm a doormat on top of everything else. And I remember that I was sitting with Wynette and Wanda, and there was a group of us that were studying some codependent issues for a few years now, or a few years back then. And I remember clearly them saying, because I was saying, this happened, and they said, maybe you're just going to have to be a bitch. Because I was just going along and trying to be a nice person, and this stuff just kept like choom 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 on top. So I did start to stand up for myself, but it was too late. And it got worse. It got a lot worse. And so, but this is when things started to form in my mind that there was something that needed to change, obviously. And so I wrote, I have to let things go. The stress and resentments are going to kill me. And I wrote, not joking. I truly felt that. It's too much for one person to care for, and I feel that in order for me to take care of myself, I have to let things go. That was the first time in my whole life that the concept of taking care of myself actually occurred to me. And it's not something that we talk about a whole lot, but just, getting to meetings, obviously, having a sponsor, sponsoring people, doing the step work. Those are all the things that we suggest that people do when they get into recovery. And I wasn't doing any of that, let alone getting to bed on time, eating right. Just self-care was out the window. On the weekends, I would couldn't believe who I was because I felt so bad. I didn't want to get up, laid in bed a lot. It was, it was disgusting. But there's this quote in Living Clean that really kind of hit home at that part in time. And it says, "We find that the defects we accept and forgive are more likely to be removed than those we fight against and try to control." And that's on page 14 if you want to look it up again. But that just really hit me. When you get this point in time where it hits you, it makes sense. There's change that's got to happen, and you're starting to understand what that change has to be. And for me, that change was learning to take care of myself, learning to take care of myself with other people, which I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a clue. So I got right down to the simple things that when we first get clean, they always say keep it simple. Here's what I did. I took a year off school because mentally I was cracked. And they did pay for a disability for a year, and I saw 2 psychiatrists and a counselor, and I actually checked myself into the partial hospitalization program at Munson, and I spent, I think, 2 weeks there, where they hammered it into my head that I had to take care of myself. They gave me a little card, which I still carry around. It says, eat regularly, drink water, go to bed, and get 8 hours of sleep. And then the list goes on about, don't take naps. Well, with depression, naps are my favorite, go-to escape mechanism, and that's what I love to do, is just, in bed all day. So I worked on the steps and my mental health. I went to a lot of meetings, and I started to hear things again. Because I just felt like when I was sitting in meetings, those years when I didn't even share, I was sitting there just please give me something. Please give me something. I just don't know what's wrong with me. I'm suffering. I just, I want to die. I started to get back around people, and I felt like I didn't even know how to act anymore. It was weird. I quickly learned who I really am, though, by having that time, that year, to just kind of take care of myself. And I spent a lot more time with my family, which turned out to be a godsend. And I'll tell you why in a little while. But here's what I've learned. I have to take care of myself. All of those things that I listed, I have to do spiritual care, emotional care, physical care. I have to go to meetings. But most of all, I found a relationship with myself that I never had. I didn't, at however many years old I was, I'm 63 now, I don't know, 4 years ago, what does that make me, 59? I didn't know what self-acceptance was, but I started to find it. I am not this bad person they say I am. I don't have to believe what they say, and I don't have to keep it going through my head ding, 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 just because it was like a squirrel cage. I found the ability to be myself and to be okay, and I found that it was okay to make mistakes and admit to them, and that had a lot of power in it, to be able to, go. I had endless meetings with principals and assistant principals, and these guys, they just used to hammer on me, just hammer. And I started believing everything they would say. Well, that year that I took off, I started to talk to God about this. This is what, I'm not that. I know I'm not that. but what am I? And for a while I was really mad at God too, and I was really upfront with God about, dang it, why did you get me into this profession if it wasn't going to work out? Why did you let me go all this way? Student loans and all which I'm still paying. Why did you do this if it's going to turn out like this? And I was really mad at God, and God knew it. But what I learned is that, all the things I've already said about taking care of myself mostly, and it just has to come from within. And it's that God spark that I think, when you take a step towards the Creator and in your moment of desperation, because I was the most desperate I've ever been. Even when I got clean the first time, I was not that desperate. I just was so desperate. And, I don't know what is going to happen, but thy will, not mine. And that's what I would just keep saying. I don't know how this this year is going to work out. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. I don't know if I'm going to have a job in a year. Yada, 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 and I let all of that go. I had to step out on faith and let all of that go and just say, I have to take care of myself. I have to do this. I don't care what happens with the damn job or whatever, I have to. So I guess, what time is it? Zach said, or it was on the schedule till 9, and I'm like, that's not going to happen. So, yeah. Some of the things that happened with students would turn out to be spiritual experiences. And it's funny, during that year that I was off, I would keep running into these students. And one of them I saw her in Rite Aid, and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you doing? She said, I'm taking the water studies course because of the trip you took us on the inland seas. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so cool, And one of my students was managing a Subway store. And I used to think that I had not made a difference at all. I felt that there was just no worth in anything that I had done over the period of time that I was a teacher. The other day, though, my cat is in kidney failure, and she's 14 years old. I put her companion down in December, and the kitty that I have now, Bailey, is on her way down as well. Well, she's been to the vet a couple of times. And last Friday, I took her in there, and this girl came out in a, scrubs. She smiled at me. And I'm like, do I know you? And she said, yeah, you were my teacher. She's a vet tech at the vet's office where I take Bailey. And she asked me twice for a hug. So all of those years I thought that, things were just going in one ear and out the other, and kids weren't doing the work that they were supposed to do or whatever. There were the kids that did. They had that motivation, and they took it and they did something with it. And just to be able to see that was awesome. Just awesome. And so I guess beyond my wildest dreams, to get back the most simple things in life, from when I started as a new recovering addict, and they told me what to do and I did it, and this time I had to go and be reminded all over again. And I got my 20-year coin during that year that I took off, but it was like getting clean all over again. I really just felt like I got back the simplest of things, how to take care of myself, going to meetings, doing what I'm supposed to do, because I truly believe that I'm going to be here for the rest of my life. I hope to God that I am. I remember years ago hearing Tricia S. say this stuff never goes away. And it makes sense to me that this disease is incurable, progressive, and fatal. So all of this time that I haven't been doing drugs, that disease has still been like running right alongside and gaining power. I just can't afford to become complacent, to put other things in front of my recovery. I can't. I know now the detriment to my life that will, that's going to cause. And so I just feel like I was given this gift the second time around, that it's okay to be who I am. Took me a long time to get that. And actually, I have not been clean as long as I used yet. So, that's going to be a couple more years before my clean time and my using time finally pass each other. But it's just, it's been a journey. And if you're new in this process, please keep coming back. Don't leave. It gets tough sometimes. And even during all those years when I felt like I was coming and I couldn't speak because all I was going to do was bitch and complain about, this job that I had and how I just couldn't figure things out, you've got to just keep coming. This disease will never leave you. It just won't. And I'm so glad to see so many. I know you're old timers. I don't know everybody, but I'm so glad to see so many people in here that, whether you're an old timer because you're 60 something or you're an old timer because you've been here for 30 years, whatever. But, or both. Or both. Yeah. So I'm just really grateful today to be able to do this. I want to thank the committee for asking me to speak. I want to thank Narcotics Anonymous for always being there, even though I went off to do other things that I thought were more important, but I made it back, thank God. And I guess I want to close by saying thanks for helping me to stay clean another day. That's all I got.